Hello there. My name is Wojtek Tymicki. I'm a head of design at 10 Clouds, a software startup from Poland, based in Warsaw. But we're all over the world, actually. Anyway, just to get familiar with my name, Wojtek, that's the English spelling of it. It's a pretty Slavic name. It basically means joyful at war. But I'm not here to talk about Slavic names, but about design. Especially about the specific mindset that entrepreneurs have to have in order to minimize risk of making decisions, especially in this very uncertain time of our future. So first, let's talk about design process. The design process is a mindset. Focus on solving problems, testing those problems, learning about how our decisions affected reality. So basically, this slide shows the iceberg. The mindset is at the very bottom, and it tells us what to do and what kind of solution we can achieve. The design problem is not a straight line. I mean, the design thinker should resist the urge to jump from the problem straight into the solution. The process of decision making can be quite chaotic, can be logical, can be rational, can be organic, and can be also quite chaotic when you're trying to find your way around different problems and eventually arrive kind of blindly at some random solution. Right now, what I want to focus is the design process. What you see here is called Double Diamond. It's a framework for making right decisions, or at least trying to make right decisions. The thing with making decisions is that we don't know if they're correct until we make one. Then we have to observe how that decision affected our reality, learn from it, draw conclusions, and try again. Diamonds represent stages of that framework, converging on gathering information and diverging at a possible solution, diverging on different ways to develop that solution, and converging on the specific solution that is most promising. Every decision comes with a certain amount of risk. The design process here is to try to minimize that amount of risk through the process of delivery, testing, iteration, and delivering it again. Testing is the only way that we can tackle the issue of uncertainty. It's much better to test the muddy water instead of leaping straight into it. But this is just the process. What you deliver and why you deliver what you deliver is the most important. This is a question that is a fundamental question that every entrepreneur has got to ask themselves. Why am I doing what I'm doing? The question why boils down to the needs of users. How is technical? It can be done better or worse, but the why provides the reasons for my action. Why am I doing it? Good design must provide a purpose. The purpose is the end value for the user, how it affects their life and how it can change their life. The design here is to find the purpose and deliver it in a way that allows users to understand its true value. Quality of design should never be the only goal. Yes, people will be attracted to pretty things. We like to surround ourselves with pretty stuff. But if that thing doesn't provide a value or doesn't answer the question, why should I use that particular thing, then it just becomes another useless object that one might hang their eye on but eventually move on or fail using. This is one of my favorite examples of startups that failed. It's called Juicera. A couple of years ago, they gathered over $120 million to produce this sophisticated machine that you can connect to your phone that does nothing else but squeeze juice out of a baggie. This is the perfect example of founders who focused on how we deliver instead of asking a question, why am I doing it? Why people need that? Do people really need that? Design is a business resource. Design should sit at the table with business and be a part of the decision process making. Design should influence business because design is not a bitmap, it's a design resource. And its purpose is to translate a functional, good-looking, is to translate business requirements into good-looking and functional product. Design understands the motivation of business, and it's a weapon that you always had but you never dare to use. That's one example where design is actually used as a weapon of deception, where a pretty package that promises a very tasty sandwich is delivering something that is nothing more than a scam. And this is a great example of how design can bridge the ethical barrier, ethical border, when it becomes a tool for deception, where it actually should be a tool for building trust between the person who delivers the product, the founder, and his users. The reason for why you want to venture into a particular solution is rooted in your vision. Vision sparks innovation, and vision is a road sign that tells you where to go. You need to understand the change you want to bring into the world. And this is the only way that change actually can come into existence. Vision and values are a foundation of every business. They should affect every aspect of its business, from marketing strategy to customer service, hiring people, and the way you grow a culture within your organization. If you ever struggle with answering the question of why am I doing certain things, you can always fall back to your values and vision and seek an answer there. Because everything you do should support your vision and should further that vision into reality. There are two types of founders: visionaries and executioners. Visionaries are living in a world of fantasy, when executioners are actually focused on getting shit done. And you have to ask yourself a question: what type of founder am I? Am I a visionary or executioner? Obviously, the truth lies something in between, and it's very important to keep the right balance. The model of UX maturity is a really good tool to evaluate, to keep the right balance between being a visionary and being a executioner. The UX maturity is a model of evaluating how your organization approaches the development of a product. If you're actually making the decisions that are based on the research, that are user-centric. Those are the levels of the UX maturity, and you can evaluate yourself, asking yourself a question: is UX or user experience completely absent from our organizations, and decisions are made top-down or just by a whim? Or all of my decisions, all my organization, all level of my organization are user-driven, that the user is at the center of attention of all levels of your organization. And gaining maturity, UX maturity is not a nice thing to have. It's something that is necessary for organization to be competitive, to differentiate a company from their competitors, and it helps deliver products that have a competitive edge, and are much more flexible, agile. They can adjust to ever-changing market landscape. It's not about the number of pivots, if you look at that data, but it's how a certain organization arrived at the idea that they need to have a pivot, that they need to change their product because what they're currently offering is not the right problem-solution fit or product market fit. Achieving a high level of UX maturity allows you to employ certain methodologies that will give you enough information to make a right decision about which way you want to pivot to. And eventually, it's going to save you a lot of money. UX maturity is achieved only if all levels of your company are involved and are focused at making user-centric decisions. So involving UX at the early concept phase of your project will will reduce the cost of development and cost of releasing a product to market. So working hand in hand with marketing, with customer service, with development, with tech leaders and stakeholders, and working as a team, trying to solve the problem of your archetype user is extremely important in, and minimizes the risk of failure. So this is like a quote from a research, but it also applies to design. So basically, I'm a designer, but I have never coded anything. Anyway, if you make a mistake early on at the creation of your product or your code, then the cost of fixing that mistake grows exponentially with time. So it's much easier to fix it right away rather than wait for the right time to fix it. The same goes with design. If at the early stages of your startup you make the wrong decisions, it's going to be hard to change that. You already sink so much money that you will be reluctant to divert from course. So now we have our vision and we know what we want to do. The question is how and for who. You have to know who your archetype user is. It will allow you to talk to them, to check if your vision, the vision for your product, resonates with them. It will keep motivating your organization. When you know who your archetype user is, it will allow you to define what you need to do in order to reach those users, to find the problem they have and propose a solution that fits their needs. Your archetype user are your early adopters. Those are innovators. Those are this is the group that will be the first to use your product. So finding out who that group is and how can you help them is extremely important in the context of making right decision. Design is about building long-lasting relationship. You want to under-promise and over-deliver. So focusing at the wow effect at the beginning of your user journey is not the right way to go about that. Reaching the peak experience for user while they're using your product is going to influence their decision on staying with your product, and it will minimize the risk of this user of leaving, and it will eventually translate in a bigger retention rates of your product. So this is a question, what is a cool factor? And the answer is pretty straight. Design is your cool factor. You have to stand out. And chasing your competition is going to only make you look like them. So your edge, your competitive edge in terms of design can be an outstanding branding, beautiful key visuals, wonderful website or micro interaction, and so on and so on. That edge that you create within your product is going to give you a means for connecting with your user. They will build a trust. They will start being emotionally attached to your product, which is very important for the purpose of retention and the word of mouth. Anyway, the fact is that the more beautiful an interface is and the more usable, the less likely your users are going to abandon that product. Many of you know this image, and what I want to focus on are the early stages of scaling, which is the MVP, the problem solution fit and product market fit. And as you can see, the archetype user are those users that are most important at the early stages of your user growth before you move on to altering your product towards early majority. Anyway, so creating MVP cannot happen without discovering who your archetype user is. And most startups actually think way too broadly about their target group. You have to be hyper-specific here in order to have the best chance at finding the right problem-solution fit. At this stage of searching problem solution fit, the work must focus on early adopters. You have to know which channels of communication they use, what problems do they have, and what products and features will positively affect their needs and life. So you must be hyper-specific here and focus on a right definition of your early adopter. And design is here basically to help you. It's here to facilitate the process of searching for that archetype user by conducting user interviews, customer discovery, product concepts validation, and so on and so on, or building UX or brand strategy. Delivering delightful design that must be a result of a validation phase that is crucial at the very beginning of your startup. So during your search for product market fit, you need to focus on optimization of macro, of large things, big features, big products. At this stage, you already have your MVP, and now you have to find if that MVP can hit the product market fit. And if it didn't, it's time to start searching by testing big ideas. And testing is not enough. You have to gather information about the results of those tests, analyze those results, and see which potential direction is most promising in your road to achieving product market fit. So again, this is way more services right now because things get quite complicated when you reach that stage. The product market fit is a moment, is a breaking moment for breakthrough moment for many startups. This is the time where they actually start earning money. They get some kind of stable revenue. So it is time to invest in basics. Having your design in order, creation of illustration system, of design system, conducting, growing your UX maturity, having very clear procedures on how you research and how you conduct experiments with your users and gather and document information about the results of those experiments. Those early investments in all of those services are necessary because they prepare you for the moment of scaling, and they are not going to be an obstacle at the later stages of startup growth. So I'm going to give you an interesting example. We've worked with a startup that before the pandemic had over 12,000 users, and during the pandemic it turns out that it was the startup, and the customer base grew suddenly to 3 million users. And it turns out that years of neglect in terms of technological debt and design mess was so unsurmountable that before we got to fix certain things that allowed this product to get on their feet, the competition already caught up with us and surpassed that startup, providing better and tailor-made solutions that basically stole that consumer base, those users. So if they had invested, even at the beginning, with providing the right framework for right organization structures, they would be way more agile in a situation where they're suddenly scaling. So you have users and you have reached a plateau in your user growth. So your product to market works. You have some kind of revenue and your user base is growing. The next thing is the big chasm. But it's nothing else than moving from early adopters to early majority. And early majority is the group of users that brings you money because there is a lot of them. So you have to optimize your product for early majority. And early majority are pragmatists. They want to follow a market leader. They're not as tech savvy as early adopters. And they're looking for a long-term commitment. So, what you have to do is take into consideration the importance of research and the correct processes within your organization. As I mentioned, that group of users is completely different than your early adopters, and they require changing the product to fit their needs. You have to simplify the product. You need to run continuous usability tests and continuous discovery in order to see that the changes that you're making to continue the growth of your users are actually resonating well with those users. The reality is pretty harsh. The 90% of startups are not even going to reach that big chasm and those dilemmas that come with it. Most of them are actually going to finish their life at the early stages of MVP. And if you look at the reasons why startup fails is the no market need. What does it mean? It means that the founders actually never ask the question if the solution that I'm providing has a problem that your users have, meaning that they provided some technical solution, a product or a service, but it did not solve any problem that users have. And that led ultimately to a failure. They ran out of cash because they overhired or they were too late to deliver product onto market and the development ate up all the funds. They got out-competed because their competition had better processes or higher level of UX maturity, or their usability of their product was very unfriendly, and that decreases the engagement of their products, and eventually users move to a better performing tool. Or the founders ignored the customers, which is the most fundamental mistake that you can actually make. So what's the conclusion of this short lecture? That design helps making you decisions in the face of uncertainty. So design goes beyond bitmap. It's a process of making decisions that are supported by research. Start with changing your mindset. And design thinking starts with changing, with an obsession with problem. You have to grow deep interest about your users and how your product changes their life. Design is a business asset that can facilitate that process and help you answer questions of why, what, and how. You have to work with right people. So partnering with right consultants at the beginning of your validation phase is only going to help you. Why? Because they have the know-how. They know the market, they know the patterns, they know how to elevate your UX maturity level. Research through design. This is the moment where you have to convert design thinking into design doing. You have to create things and you have to test them and learn how those tests perform in order to make better decisions in the future. Continuous discovery helps you learn while you're shipping. You have to learn if your bets were correct. Continuous discovery is nothing more than a regular touch points with your clients, with your users. Ideally, you should do it even every week or every 2 weeks. That's the only way you can actually have a permanent channel of communication between your company and your users, and that allows you to gather information that will influence the process of making decisions. Your purpose as an entrepreneur, as a founder, is to bring change to people. Your financial success is going to be a measurement of how many users are following your vision. People love working with passionate founders, that it inspires people knowing how that passion can change the world and how can it influence the life of others. You have to be patient with what you do. You cannot expect quick wins. You have to do, try, test, learn, and do it again. You might have only one chance, and you have to do it with right people. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can hit me up.
You said something about shortening the path when you try to implement the right design, and shortening the path from the MVP to the maturity. So I believe that my project can expand and get mature earlier once I implement the right design at the very beginning. But what in a situation when I'm not familiar with the design? I'm not aware of the fact that I need a proper design to grow my project faster from the MVP to the maturity level.
Okay. I'm not sure if I'm going to answer precisely that question anyway. What I always preach to clients is to have a very rigid way your designs are constructed. The more patterns you have developed in depths of design, the more time you spend on developing your design system, that helps you to iterate much faster. You don't have to spend hours coming up with certain user interface patterns. You already have them. And sometimes it's even easier to use design systems that already exist. This way you kind of jump straight into designing ready solution without having to design wireframes and stuff like that. So, and at the end of the day, that helps you create prototypes much faster and test those prototypes with users. All right.
Perhaps is it more likely that today many companies are not aware that they need a good design at the very beginning? They're feeling like, well, I do need a proper background, but I do not think about, good foreground.
That's a very specific question.
It was meant to be.
Well, it all depends. I mean, there is a process in which we come up with ideas on how to show a certain solution with clients. So, but those are really technicalities. At the beginning, to be honest, I might be, cursed for what I'm going to say. But in terms of interface, at the very beginning, it doesn't really matter how it looks like. It has to be functional. Because, early users are very forgiving. They can forgive you if the design is not pixel perfect, or maybe that it's not looking outstanding, but they're not going to forgive you if it's not usable. So you do have to design, when you're designing, you have to focus on usability, on the way you interact with the product, not necessarily on how it looks. But that's just the beginning, and later on you have to fill out that that gap and make your and gain that competitive edge in terms of how your design look like, because otherwise you're just gonna stand out negatively against your competition.